Picture an ancient landscape, quiet except for wind. A man raises his arm. A falcon launches from his glove and climbs into the sky until it's barely a speck. For a moment, it's gone completely, swallowed by distance. Then it returns. The obvious question is how humans ever taught a wild predator to do that, to leave to hunt, to come back. But there's a more interesting question underneath it. What did the falcon learn about the human standing there, waiting? Falconry is one of the oldest working relationships between humans and wild animals, practiced across many ancient cultures for hunting. Falcons were valued for traits no human could match: extraordinary speed, precision, and eyesight built for spotting movement across huge distances. But turning that wild ability into something a human could work alongside wasn't simple. It required repeated exposure, patience, and an animal willing to tolerate and eventually respond to a human's presence. That's the part worth sitting with. Not the history of falconry itself, but the fact that a wild predator, one with no evolutionary reason to trust a human, gradually did something close to it. To understand that relationship, you have to understand how differently a falcon experiences the world. Falcons have some of the sharpest eyesight in the animal kingdom, capable of detecting small movements from remarkable distances. Where a human looking across a field sees grass and open space, a falcon looking at the same scene may be picking up the flicker of movement from prey far beyond human range. Two beings could stand in the same place, looking in the same direction, and be experiencing almost entirely different landscapes. That gap is worth remembering because it shapes everything else. The falcon wasn't just a fast animal a human pointed at prey. It was an animal perceiving a version of the world humans couldn't fully access, and humans had to learn to work with that, not around it. So what did training actually involve? At its core, falconry relies on principles well documented in animal learning: conditioning, association, and repetition. A falcon that consistently receives food after returning to a handler is more likely to repeat that behavior, not because it understands the human's intentions, but because it has learned a reliable pattern. Over time, falcons can learn to recognize routines, respond to specific cues, and associate a particular handler with safety, food, or successful hunts. Some individual birds show more consistent, cooperative behavior than others, suggesting personality differences play a role, much as they do in other trained animals. What we cannot responsibly claim is that a falcon understands human language, intentions, or thoughts. Its responses are built on association and experience, not comprehension in the human sense. Scientists studying raptor cognition are still working out how far that learning extends, and that uncertainty is worth stating plainly rather than glossing over. It's easy to describe this as simply humans trained the falcon, but that framing leaves out half the story. Could a falcon learn to anticipate a routine, recognizing, for example, that a certain time of day or certain movement usually means a hunt is about to begin? Reasonably, yes, based on how conditioning works in other trained animals. Could it recognize a familiar handler over a stranger? Many trained animals show some capacity to distinguish familiar humans through a combination of visual and behavioral cues, and there's no strong reason to think falcons are an exception, even though direct research specifically on this in falcons remains limited. Did repeated interaction shape how a falcon behaved around its handler over time? Almost certainly. Behavior shaped by consistent experience is one of the most well-supported ideas in animal learning. None of this means the falcon understood the human the way the human understood the falcon. But it does mean the falcon wasn't a passive tool being operated. It was an animal accumulating experience and adjusting because of it. It's worth remembering that even a well-trained falcon never stopped being what it was, a wild predator running on instinct. The human brought planning, positioning, patience, training built over repeated sessions. The falcon brought vision no human eye could match, speed built for the chase, and split-second reactions no training could fully replace. Neither side replaced the other's strengths. The partnership worked precisely because it combined two very different kinds of capability, human strategy and animal instinct, into a single, functioning hunt. That's not domestication in the way we think of dogs or horses. It's something closer to a temporary high-stakes cooperation between two minds that stayed fundamentally different from each other. Modern falconry still exists, practiced today both as a traditional skill and in some regions for conservation and pest control. The core relationship hasn't changed as much as you might expect. Trust is still built slowly, through repetition and consistency, not force. What has changed is our understanding of what's happening on the falcon side. Modern observation and behavioral study have given us a clearer, more cautious picture of how much a falcon is learning, remembering, and adjusting, without overstating it into something it isn't. In other words, the practice looks similar. What's changed is how carefully we're willing to think about the animal's experience of it. We tend to measure intelligence in human terms: language, math, tools, puzzles solved in a lab. But a falcon doesn't need any of that to display something worth calling sophisticated. Reading fast-changing conditions mid-flight, learning a routine well enough to rely on it, recognizing a familiar figure across repeated encounters, making split-second decisions with no time to think them through in any human sense. Maybe intelligence isn't a single ladder with humans at the top. Maybe it's several different systems, each shaped by what a species needs to survive, and a falcon's version looks nothing like ours without being any less real. Picture that falcon again, disappearing into the sky, then returning. The human standing there may have believed he was simply training a bird to hunt. But every flight, every return, every repeated interaction may also have been teaching the falcon something about him. Perhaps the most fascinating part of that ancient relationship wasn't that humans learned to work with falcons. It was that two very different minds learned how to work together. If stories like this make you look at animals a little differently, subscribe to Animal Mind Lab. There's a lot more hidden intelligence out there worth uncovering.